Third thing, today we're going to look at a little bit of magic words, lean, agile design, and then the true magic is in the shared meanings, which in all simplicity means that if I say design, do we all have a shared meaning, what that word means? That's the point of today. Next Wednesday, it's going to be Jari running the show about facilitation in more depth, and then we are looking at tools and sprints, and then, time flies, then we're going to close shop. Some of you might have wondered, and this is particularly good for today's lecture, why so much about agility, lean startup design? Isn't organization much wider thing than any of these fashionable words? That is absolutely correct. Organization change is much, much bigger, wider, and holistic, like we talked last time. However, we're focusing on these concepts, especially today, but pretty much throughout the whole course, because they're very practical, they are topical, go out there and buy an organizational design newspaper, and the news is all about those words. Or to put it in another way, yeah, those are very much in fashion, and there are reasons for them. And they are a great example as well. And last, but maybe boringly, we have limited time. This is not a comprehensive course on change management. If we had a comprehensive course in change management, then we could probably go into more traditional existing and different kinds of models, frameworks for change leadership and change management. Because as you probably know, change management is an old discipline. One of the classics there, the Lewin and Cartwright. Look at that. That's from 1951. So just as an example of academic and other frameworks for changing organization. Have a look at it while I sip my coffee. Good. Exercise 2, the thing that most of you returned last week. A little bit of reflections. Kind reminder, please return the reflections, like we said last week as well. Not only the drawings, the reflections is actually the thing we want you to learn. So please make an effort and return them as we ask. Good. Second thing, please add the other person's name in the exercise, because how on earth do we know otherwise whose, onions or temper things you're doing? Just, remember, this wasn't about you, it's about facilitating others. It's like these little details that, okay, this was, hey, I'm Risto and I was facilitating Jari's work. Brilliant. You can write that over there. We appreciate it. And then last, this is fortunately a minority here, but please, please, please make an effort in your deliverable. I was spending this morning going through all of them. And as a teacher, it's kind of, just go, when somebody returns something that obviously they have not made an effort. We haven't sent any boomerangs yet, but it kind of tempted to go like, hey, come on, give us a break, do it again. So please make an effort and everybody wins once more. And a couple of examples, anonymous examples, just, little details. These two examples, I have no idea. Perhaps you did everything, perhaps you learned everything, but if this is what you return, then I kind of get this feeling like, seriously? Did you listen to the lecture? Did you read the exercise? I mean, reflections in 3 bullets that are kind of just general things, or the one on the right-hand side, there's no reflections at all. And, the content is kind of like, nah, did you really? Let's be optimistic. You probably did everything in your conversation, but it just doesn't show here anywhere. So please make an effort. Thank you. Make an effort like obviously Nadine and Julia did. Look at this one. Applause to Nadine and Julia. This is brilliant. I mean, it doesn't have to be more complex than this. Both persons' reflections, first Nadine's reflections and then Julia's reflections, and really good stuff. Great, fantastic. This is what we're asking you to do. So good work. And have a look at this if you didn't do anything similar this week. Next week is your chance to remedy the situation. So what did you write? about last week's temporal onion exercise. So again, I have picked a couple of, I think, really good or insightful or thought-provoking comments. And remember, last week's point was about desired impact, that we actually draw this timeline, but we extend the timeline to the history, and then we extended it way forward into the future. And a couple of points from you. First one, by thinking about the desired impact. Remember, in this model, we think the impact happens outside the project. And then continuing, makes you think automatically the change, not just the project deliverables. Focus on value. Yes, exactly, precisely. You focus on the value that the project does, not the project itself. Also going the other way around, back to the history, thinking the before helps to understand the motivation for the project. Where did this come from? Why are we doing this? Is there something we should know about this? Excellent point. It is often that we stop to, it's not often that we stop to think about the point of what we are doing. What is the wider impact? And you become blind into your actions and impact and feel like a hamster on a wheel. Excellent point. We seldom stop and look at the big picture. And now at least you have a tool to do that. It's important to recognize the history also because it always carries some inertia to the projects which cannot be neglected. Yes, it's good to know where this came from. What are the motivations and reasons before the project starts? And last, can be used against resistance to change. So the point was that this tool, this timeline tool, looking at the past, far away into the future, can be used to resistance for change, forcing everyone to think further into the future. So this is the classic thing. I don't know if you do this yourself or in your leadership or whatever situation is, that if people cannot see the big picture, if they cannot see the long-term goal, the meaningfulness of all this, then we as human beings typically look at small details and insignificant stuff. But once you kind of show people that, yeah, come on, the world is not perfect, the weather is crappy, but stick around because this is the really thing we're looking for. This is the impact we're trying to do. And I think that quote really catches that. This quote was brilliant. Like you see, I dedicated a whole slide to it because this is really the gist of the exercise number 2. And whoever wrote this wrote like this. It reminds me on how golf professionals play. They think from where they want to hit the last stroke and where they need to be one stroke earlier and so on, until you know where you need to aim your first shot. That's precisely the point. Let's start with the desired impact and then go backwards into the very first step we need to do. In this exercise, we actually also go further backwards because we go to the history as well. So again, excellent thing. And if professional golfers do it, then professional facilitators should do it as well. I have a couple of extra quotes about the facilitation because I think these were brilliant. One of you wrote, helping others can mean many things. Not only that others achieve their goal, it can also be about inspiring people to think and opening new opportunities, example. So yeah, it's not, facilitation doesn't have to be very practical or utilitarian. It can be actually inspiring and motivating and all of that happens in a good interaction. Some of you wrote safe space is important. Listening is important in creating a safe space. Well put, really well put. Last one about the facilitation, saying things aloud clears your own thoughts. You cannot achieve this by working on your own project. This is really interesting. This would be great, to start a conversation, whoever wrote this, that, hey, that's really, what do you mean by it? And how did it happen in your exercise? But I believe we are kind of all get it, that when you start saying your thoughts aloud, explaining them to another person, then you kind of start seeing things. And then as an outsider listening to the other person, you can see things about their project, which you couldn't see about your own project. Great. The chat is open if you want to add anything or comment or anything. But that was the good, important stuff about comments from your reflections. and really kind of handpicking here the stuff that we were trying to achieve as well. Then actually a couple of points about, I noticed a couple of things perhaps you misunderstood or for some reason didn't go as, I had planned the exercise. The first example is this. I'm not saying that, well, let's look at this. This is one of you. Obviously, the person, their project was a master's thesis. And the way that the person did this was that after 1 month, had things like writing the research proposal, meeting the supervisor. After 6 months, the first version of thesis is ready. So it actually got me thinking about the thing over here that I think these are things that happen inside the project. But these are actually things that should happen inside the box when it says master's thesis. So the point was to think about the impact that happens once the project has finished. So for example, in the case of a master's thesis, is that, okay, now I have returned my master's thesis, it is accepted, the project is closed. Then what needs to happen after 1 month? You have returned the master's. What needs to happen after 6 months after returning your thesis? And that would give you the context of what's the purpose of this thesis project. So just remember, and it wasn't just this one, I think this was in a couple of other cases as well, that rather than understanding that the project has kind of closed and you're thinking the impact after the project, some of you were like listing milestones of the project after 1 month or 6 months. That wasn't actually what we were looking for, because that's not the desired impact of the project. That is milestones inside the project. And another one is clarifying the desired impact. I think this was a couple of you also did it like this. And these are actual quotes from you, the white text. So the first one was that after a year, the design impact is that the website is updatable so that new content can be applied. Okay, kind of I got the feeling was that that perhaps the next question to ask is that, yes, the impact, you had a project that you make a website, but is the impact really that the website is updatable? I mean, then maybe you should be pushing yourself into thinking that, why are we doing this website in the first place? What is the impact of having that website? Which is kind of outside the website now, isn't it? Or another result from you was that some team or some person wrote that in the following months, we collect lessons learned, we collect feedback, we document what happened. Yeah, but that's not really outside your project, is it? Are these the desired impacts of your project or things that you probably want to do after the project? Because if these are the desired impacts, then it would mean that your project's desired impact is to collect feedback from the same project. Probably not. So make a distinction here, that the whole point of the exercise was that once the project ends, might be that you leave that workplace. Maybe you're a consultant and once the project is over, you're gone. But the project was done for a reason. And the success of that project is most probably measured after the project is done. 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. And if you want to do that project really well, then you should probably understand those impacts that are outside the project. And those impacts, not outputs, not like technical things you produce, but, actions, measurements, metrics, so forth. So this far we have two exercises. The third one is coming up. And these have been exercises to clarify. First was the onion, a very simple drawing exercise to clarify the context for the change. Last week, second exercise, the desired impact for the change. So kind of tools to help you understand that what are we actually aiming for, because the impact probably happens in the future, not once the project stops. So first of all, just again to remind you that These are facilitation tools to help you and other people to spot if there are any issues, problems, challenges, risks. So having the conversation with these tools, it's the conversation that typically shows that, hey, we don't have an answer for this. Or, hey, now that we're actually going this over and having this conversation, I can see a risk here. So that's why these are facilitation tools. These are not magical spells that will give you directly the answers. The other thing to keep in mind is that there's a subtle difference, but an important one, between facilitating an answer and coming up with an answer. So it's exactly what you have been doing in the pairs. So one of you is facilitating an answer to the question. And if it's not your project, if you're not even working in the same workplace, how on earth could you come up with an answer? What you can do is to facilitate the other person to come up with an answer. And if it's your own baby, if it's your own project, and you're responsible, then you probably are responsible for coming up with an answer. And if the answer was typically not that simple, you probably appreciate that somebody's helping you, facilitating you to come up with an answer. And this is actually what you have been practicing. It's a very subtle difference. And I hope that you all you probably knew the difference already, but now definitely you can see the difference between these two. And the application is that when you go to your work or whatever project, is kind of like, which kind of role am I going to take? Am I now the facilitator, or am I now the person responsible for these answers? And I think it's a very, very good distinction to understand. And then this week's exercise number 3 actually continues our, how should I say, roadmap of exercises, or a collection of exercises, because this week's exercise is going to be all about success criteria. See, first, context for the change, desired impact, and then success criteria. Here we go. We're going to use this DUM framework. Again, a very simple one, nothing magic, nothing too complex. And maybe you're familiar with this. The DUM framework, or writing down success criteria, is as follows: that if you write down that this is what we want to achieve, you can ask questions. Is it doable? Is it understandable? Is it measurable? And is it beneficial? Is it actually taking us forward? If you don't like DUM, some people use SMART goals, which is pretty much the same thing, but in different words. Is that, okay, we're writing down the objectives. Are they specific? Are they measurable? Are they achievable? Are they realistic? And are they timely? But we're going to get back to the DUM one. We're going to use that this week. So, kind of summarize. Everybody here understands that, running a project, facilitating a change, doing stuff, goals are important. If there's more than one person, it's really good that we write down what we're trying to achieve collectively. We all understand that communication is important. We need to have conversations, discussions, dialogue, and so forth. Third, we understand communicating goals is important. If the people in the team, if the people in the organization never heard that these are our goals or had a conversation, how are they going to achieve them? Simple stuff, I think we could teach these to a 10-year-old and they would be like, okay, sure, let's do that. But for some reason, this is extremely difficult. This is hard. Why? Well, let's give an example. Typically, when we start writing down goals, the very first version, they're quite ambiguous. They're not clear. And the first thing that is difficult to achieve when writing things down or communicating them is that writing them in a way that we know if we have achieved them or not. So here's actually 4 examples I picked from your exercise 2. Goals, more productive work. It's a goal. IT skills and legal understanding improved among the workforce. That's an objective. UX drive the impact, open communication culture. Well, now imagine yourself that this was the big boss and the big boss gave you these 4 goals for the next months. And if you didn't have any dialogue, or if this was the only document you got, then maybe you had answers to questions like these. More productive work. For whom? What is productive here? IT skills and legal understanding improved. Is it enough if one person improves these? And what do you mean by improvement? UX drive the impact. What does that actually mean? Open communication culture. Okay, does it mean that we have now a closed communication culture? What's actually the change we want to see here? Now, keep in mind, I'm not saying that the white text, the stuff you had in your exercise, is wrong or bad. I'm saying that that's exactly what happens in a kind of very first version of goals. People ask you to write down your goals. You typically write something like that. But the thing is that you should start iterating about them. You should start working, massaging them, making them better. So for example, if you take the dumb goals, one of the key things is the measurability, or in the SMART, they call it achievability. So the question is, if you give somebody a goal, I think they would appreciate if they know they have reached it or not. So goals like this: 200 new customers by June, yes or no? When June comes, we know if there's 200 or less. That's pretty clear. Funding proposal accepted. It is either accepted or it is not accepted. Thesis submitted. You either submitted it or you didn't. There's no ambiguity about it. Some canvas is in use in 7 of our teams. Then you go and measure. 6 teams didn't achieve. 8 teams, yes, we achieved. Pretty unambiguous. Again, I'm sure that all of you understand this. I think it's worth thinking, why is it so difficult? Why don't we clarify the goals? Why do we stop with the very first version, which is kind of fuzzy? Here's my take. First of all, people say it's complex, it's difficult. That is true. It's our boss's job. It's not my job to clarify the goal. I don't know. There are so many stakeholders, to networks of people. Yeah. You can't put a number on it. That's probably true sometimes. We will know when we see it. That's a difficult one, saying that, okay, we're not going to clarify the goals. We'll know. We'll know when we get there. Well, I don't think that's really good enough. One is that we've never done it before. Not good enough reason. I think you should still able to set really good and clear goals. No one asked to do it. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Nobody actually asked us to clarify goals, and I think that's one of the main reasons we don't do them. To sum it up, I think we don't clarify the goals because we think it is easy. And in reality, it is not. It is not easy to make your goals doable, understandable, measurable, and beneficial. It is actually hard work. It's intellectual work, it's discussion, it's dialogue, it's iteration, and so forth. But somehow we believe that, once we have this amazing workshop and we write down that this project's impact is to increase our customer centricity. Yeah, that's what it is. That's totally an ambiguous goal. So one of the theme for this week, for the exercise, is to play dumb, which means facilitation. So if the other person is having challenges of clarifying their goals and understanding them, this is where facilitation comes in. You can start asking questions such as these. Well, how will you know you have been successful? How will you know whether that thing has happened? How do you know if it has happened? Do you have some kind of metrics? How do you know? How do you know if it has not happened? How would that be beneficial? How can you measure that? So this is facilitation. This is helping the other person to, clarify things from these 4 different angles. And yeah, facilitation and leadership. I'm sure many of you know it's actually quite often about asking stupid questions. Good. Let's bring in some champagne. So I have actually used this a couple of times, is just to make it kind of fun and maybe make it easy to understand. Let's have our goals can be very official. It has a bureaucratic sound to it. Why not make it really fun? So let's, literally go and buy a bottle of, I don't have a bottle of champagne here. Buy a bottle of champagne, put it into the fridge, and then go to the team and say, hey, we have now a very expensive champagne there in the fridge. Let's drink that bottle if we have been successful in 1 month. Now let's write down in a piece of paper what needs to have happened so we can open that champagne bottle. And then let's make them doable. Let's make it achievable. Let's make it measurable. Because all of us really want to drink that bottle of champagne. So we want kind of criteria that we can go every morning and look and go like, have we achieved that? Not yet. Next morning, have we achieved that? Not yet. Have we achieved that? Hey, now we have achieved it. Open fridge, and there we go. That's really the point of it, isn't it? Collectively deciding how do we define success. Now, some of you might be saying, of course, that, well, success criteria comes from the outside. Of course it does. But again, it's for the team. It's for the people who are, responsible for implementing it. They do the sub goals and the conversations. And then you can go upwards, whoever boss gave you the original goals, and starting asking these facilitative questions. Is it doable? Is it understandable? Is it measurable? Is it beneficial? Dumb champagne. That's what it's called. So now you can see that these exercises are actually, at least we're trying to make a point here. Organizational context, desired impact, and to help to clarify the goals. Do these 3 things, and things start happening. And this is leadership, this is mentoring, this is facilitation, this is sparring somebody. You don't even have to be a super duper expert. You could just take these tools and start these conversations with somebody. What's the context? What are you really trying to achieve? How do you know you have achieved it? 3 questions work in almost any situation, I would say. Now, if we put this into kind of a, organization culture, transformation, the kind of the change transformations, the big things that we talked about last time, it is actually very often one continuous goal clarification exercise. So what this image is trying to tell you is kind of you start with some ambiguous objectives. Remember the very first drafts. Then you do the onion, and it helps you clarify the context. And then you do the desired impact. And now you have impactful objectives to understand what's the impact on the objectives. And then you do the criteria for the champagne. And now you have those contextual objectives with being impactful, and now they are dumb. They are actually really good objectives because everybody understands them, they're measurable, and so forth. And part of this process, you can see at each stage, you need to ask people, you need to listen to people. And we are recommending you draw some circles and lines and make it visual, make it interactive. And of course, that's what facilitation is. That's where facilitation is needed. Clarifying objectives is not trivial. It is actually very complex. You probably need some help. And the good thing is, the help doesn't have to be expert on that topic. The help doesn't have to be a person working for that company. As you might have noticed in the exercises, sometimes it's actually better that the person has no idea of the project. And they can start asking questions, listening to you, and drawing things. Simple as that. And hey, for the same charge, for the same price of facilitating change, this actually works for any project. You have some ambiguous objectives, make contextual, make them impactful, make them dumb. And there you go. Let's take a breather. The fourth, Mika is asking, the 4th goal is still vague. You mean the dumb? Maybe this was earlier. Classic reason, if we have a vague goal, we avoid looking like a failure. Yeah, that's a good addition. There is this danger of having a really clear goal and then you miss it and then you're punished for it. If it's vague, you can wiggle your way around. These steps work in building a strategy as well. Thank you, Kassu. So that's one more place where these can be applied. Okay, still 13 minutes to go. So where are we now? So when I say, where are we now? I mean kind of this big change project that is kind of the thinking in the background for the whole course. So we are here. We got to make an organization responsive. I remember first lecture. There was this fog of uncertainty. Yes, probably there we can't see the future. We talked about various lenses. Jari talked about them. So there's no single truth. And then we had the John Shook example of change by doing and behavior. So that's what the situation we are in. What do we have? So we kind of gave you a vague vision for a new culture. This is a kind of a new culture we want. We can take some kind of framework for a change program. And we get the 3 tools. We get the context, we get some idea on the impact, and we get measurable goals. So that's what we have. The situation is this. It's all foggy. These are the tools we have. So let's remind us. Uncertainty, remember, can't plan it, must build a responsive culture. Culture of doing. Doing is routines and tools. Routines and tools. That's where the lean startup, agile, and design come in. And remember, this is why all of this stuff has become so popular in the past decade. They're all about doing. They're all about routines. They're all about giving you a process of, tackling uncertainty. Remember this picture? Here's uncertainty, and we want a competitive advantage. And what do? We build a responsive culture of doing with routines, tools, and practices. And that's why these weeklies and dailies and retrospectives and workshops and Kanbans are coming all over us. We're reformatting our daily work so that we get behaviors, we get shared thinking, shared meanings, and then ideally a responsive autonomous culture, and we are competitive. So maybe the next practical question is, where do we start? Design, agile, lean startup. So which one? Here's a bunch of vitamins. Which one do I take? Just a quick reminder, where do these come from? Because it's good to know the history, because history brings baggage. So definitely agile comes from software development, I think late 1990s or something, correct me if I'm wrong. Individuals and interactions are over processes and tools, and working software is kind of manifesto that we appreciate these things against the kind of classic bureaucratic things. We have lean, which is even older than the agile, coming from all the way back to the Japanese car manufacturing. We have things like situational approach, so understanding the context, that's what it means. Continuous improvement, developing capabilities, basic thinking mindset and all that. Another house, lean houses, has this cycle action or reflections, creating a learning organization all the time, systematic problem solving, establish high agreement of both what and how. That's a shared meaning, isn't it? Then, of course, we have things like more lean because it's so old, eliminating waste from different value chains or logistic chains like this. Then we have the lean startup that came, 10 years ago or something like that, where it takes the same principles but put them in a startup context and kind of brings in the business side of it, that you don't have money to do these things, so you need to kind of build fast and learn fast all the time. We have the good old design thinking, which is double diamonds, and where we have a problem and then we just open the problem space, but then we come up with something and we have initial strategy, and then we open it again, get some empirical events, and then we just converge again and so forth. So we have different schools and mindset of thinking and so on. And actually, there a really good book. It's one in the middle by Johnny Schneider, Understanding Design Thinking, Lean and Agile. It kind of is one way of putting it together. So he has actually done the work of looking at these 3: lean mindset, design thinking, agile mindset. That kind of where do they contribute, if you will? And kind of he continues by putting like this, that if you take all of them together, you can see that definitely the lean mindset is a lot about the organization, aligning people to purpose. It's a lot about strategic vision, or having a vision, seeing into the future. That's about what design really helps you to think about. What do people actually need? The agile mindset is very, very much about solution delivery. So that, how do we actually get things done? Remember, that came from software engineering. They had this, that we need to deliver, good quality software. So if you take Johnny Schneider's point, if you take all of these vitamins at the same time, the lean startup, design thinking, all of that, put into your hand and gulp them, Then Johnny Schneider's point in the previous picture is here again, is that what they really mean for your leadership is that, focuses on the vision. You need to explore problems and ideate solutions. Helps your strategy into an actionable course. It gives you really good vitamins for solution delivery, really good at adapting to changes. It's more like evolution-like. Remember, driving into the fog, you don't know what's coming. You need to kind of evolve as you go. And last but not least, it's about the organization as well. Doing is learning. That's really, really important in it. Aligning people to purpose. How do you make all the people understand things in the same way? And then he has a thing called value-based portfolio thinking. Another example is this one. And this I have a link in the end of the lecture today. You can watch the video about this. 10 principles that work with any methodology. So these are really good, and I have no problem. I'm not going to criticize them at all. And definitely have a look into this. The Johnny Schneider book or this video I told you you're going to see. But actually I have a question is kind of like very similar to them, but I'm kind of maybe asking it very straightforward, is that if those two people kind of looked at all the medicine and put it in together one capsule, this has vitamin A, C, B, D, this has everything in it. That's what they did, the video and in their book. What I'm asking is that if I take all those vitamins, if I take design, lean, so forth, that's the medicine. What's actually the illness? Why do I have this organizational headache? Where does that come from? Yeah, sure, I can take the medicine and the headache goes away, but I would really like to understand why am I having this headache? And this is my take on it. If we look at all of these principles, mindsets, and tools and philosophies, and look at all the questions they provide you an answer, it boils down into these two questions. What is valuable work? And what is valued in general? So the headache, I'm saying, is that people in an organization don't really know what is valuable work. When they come to work Monday morning and start doing things, they're not quite certain, is this actually valuable? And they're not quite certain either what is valued in general. I'll come back to that later. And then, yes, of course, all of these philosophies have lots and lots of about stuff like that I have in the bottom. How to work in a team, how to work with uncertainty, how to communicate, how to get not fixated on one solution. But I think here is a good point to look at this super fashionable word, value, because I'm sure you all have heard it, blah, 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 value-driven, blah, 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 or reduce waste, focus on value, value to our customers, create value, value whatnot. Our company is not about money or profits, we're about value. And everybody wants to deliver value. So let's take a breather and think about how often do you actually hit the brakes and think, what does this value really mean? And that's the headache. If you look at all these pills that, yeah, Carolina, we're taking at the same time, maybe you don't have to take all the pills at the same time if you start understanding what's causing the headache. And part of the headache is that we think that we understand what this value means in different contexts. But I'm pretty sure that no. Why would people know what it means? So sometimes, you might, I'm kind of provoking here, is that if those are the key questions, let's look at them for a second. So the answer is that the big boss just tells us what value is, and we are done. Problem solved. Let's go to the grocery store. Let's buy one value. Let's take it from the grocery store, bring it to the organization and say, this is the Wikipedia definition of value. Now everything is solved. Well, of course it isn't. And typically, if you start, actually looking around, like I said, think about it. When you go on Monday to your work, whether it's, a day job, whether you're a student, you start your study work, if you will. How do you know that whatever energy you're putting into it, that is actually valuable, that you're not wasting your time and everybody else's time. And one way of looking at it is these very familiar questions. I think I really like these very simple questions. For example, which task is most important? How do I know? Why are we doing this? I don't know. Are we just wasting our time here? I have no idea. Should I be doing this or should I be doing that? Should I be giving this lecture or should I be, writing papers? Which one is more valuable? Is this what is expected of me? In this world where we are all experts, is this expected? I think these are the key questions that probably ring a bell and sound familiar. And it's all about what is valuable work. Very practical stuff. And then we have the other question, what is valued in general? And I think this is different. But yet again, I'm saying that we all understand what it means. It might be us thinking something like, I'm a really ambitious person. Do they really appreciate ambitious here? Is that okay in this work culture? Or, can I say these things to my boss? Will they get offended? Do they appreciate criticisms? Or like the one in the right upper hand corner, I take a lot of initiative. I'm really proactive. Like Risto was saying in this lecture, be proactive. Well, if I'm super proactive, will everybody appreciate it? Is that okay? Is it rewarded? Is it socially acceptable? That is what I call valued in general. It's not directly kind of connected to the value of your work, but it's us as human beings, kind of social cohesion, acceptance, everything. What is valued in this culture? What is valued in this environment? And of course, the point is that value is a very, very loaded word with a lot of meaning packed into one. And if you just use it very lightly, you need to understand that it means many, many things in many different contexts for many different people. But yet again, I'm hoping that these kind of bubbles I had here, these thought bubbles, also show you that's actually very tangible. You don't have to now dig into academic research to figure out that, hey, people have practical problems if they don't know that their work is valuable or not. That's why you can't go to the grocery store and buy value, because there are no ready answers. We only have shared meanings. And we need to create those shared meanings. And then, my friends, we're going to create after the break. Okay, 5 past. We continue. So, shared meanings. Okay, why are we doing this and what's the point? We talked about the word value, and I put it now here in quotation marks because it packs a lot of things in it. But the point is that if you're doing leadership, if you're doing change, if you're doing facilitation, you're not alone. So the question is, how do you get people to work towards the same values, the same goals? Another way I'm kind of pushing is that how do we make sure people have the same meanings for things? So the classical way of doing this is numbers. Numbers are great. And remember the dumb criteria. The good thing about numbers is they are unambiguous. If you want things to be 5 and something is 4, it's not a 5. If it's 6, it's not a 5 either. 5 is 5. That's great. That's power, We want, you want your grade to be 5 and you get a 4, that's not a 5. Simple as that. Didn't achieve it. Extremely easy to communicate. Now people, our MPS score is 8.2. It has to be 9 by the end of this month. End of communication. Everybody understands that this number, which was this, has to be this. And then we can do things. And we can easily focus on the same target. We can have people, 100,000 people working for the same organization, and we give one number, let's say the share value, and we need to increase it by 2%. Then we have 100,000 people understanding that this is our shared goal. Is it doable? I don't know. Understandable? Yeah. Measurable? Definitely. Beneficial? Yeah, probably for the shareholders at least. However, you probably saw this coming. You cannot really put a number on everything. Well, you can, but you probably shouldn't. Because if you, I put here on the left-hand side, stuff that keeps popping up in different kind of organizations, whatever they call their values. See if the word value pops in. So let's say that your company wants you to achieve empathy. Your organization wants to be customer-centric. You want to increase the responsiveness. These are things that you probably shouldn't put a number on. If you can, then it becomes easy to communicate. But we all understand the difficulties of quantifying such complex phenomena as sustainability or culture or organization. But the point is, you still want everybody to understand these key words the same way. Let's have more empathy. It would be fantastic if everybody understands what empathy means. We want to be more customer-centric. Again, everybody understands the same way, more or less. And we can actually then, everybody can autonomously start doing jobs to be more customer-centric or empathetic. But the thing is that these can't be your meanings as such. Again, you can't go to the grocery store, buy the definition of empathy and give it to your people and that's it. No. This is where the facilitation comes in. You need to facilitate the meanings first to yourself and then to your team, to the other people. Do you understand what it means? It's not enough that you understand, you have a shared meaning with this man. And then the good news is here. Etienne Wenger and his book on communities of practice, once I started reading it many, many years ago, like, wow, this is like a framework for any facilitator. So here's the framework. Here's what Etienne Wenger in the book you can see down there says is all about, facilitation, or he calls it the negotiation of meaning. So what he is writing about is that when we meet other people, we actually start this social process of negotiation. What do you mean by this key term? And we actually do it automatically as human beings, as social animals, if you will. And it has two distinct parts. There's this participation part, and there is this reification part. I'm going to tell you what it means because they're actually very intuitive. So the participation part is something we are all familiar with. This is the workshopping part. This is what this image is trying to tell you. So for example, if we're trying to figure out what is our main customer group, or in other words, we're trying to have a shared meaning, what is our main customer group? What we typically do is have a workshop. We have a good discussion, we put those Post-its on a wall, somebody facilitates the process, and then maybe after a good workshop, we're like, yeah. We all agree what is our main customer group and what it actually means. All the conversations we've had, we kind of all understand that, the nuances and everything that we had the conversations, why we decided that this is the main customer group. So that's the participation part. Then we have the reification part. And the reification, maybe it opens up, it comes from the Latin word res, which means a thing, an object, something concrete. So reification, to put it bluntly, means taking abstract things and making them concrete. And that's what we do when we create documents. That's what we do when we write plans. Use whatever canvases. We use Miro or Mural, or make a video, make a press release. When we write a contract, think about the contract you have with your employer. It's an extremely abstract thing between one person and an organization, but the contract makes things concrete. It's a reification of the agreements between you and your employer. These PowerPoints, they are a reification of all the thoughts and thinking behind these lectures. And what Wenger is saying is that these come as a pair. But this is how we negotiate as human beings meanings. This is how we create shared meanings. We have participation, and then we need to have reification. And then again, we have participation. And that's why the reason why it is a loop is that, you write something down, you make a document, for example, and then you bring that document to the workshop, and then you have a participation. Everybody talks about it, you take it forward, and you have a dialogue. And after the workshop, you update the document. And then you go to another team and have another workshop based on that. They can see it becomes this cycle of participation and reification. Simple as that. And with this framework, we can easily see that if it's not balanced, then we get a little bit of problems. If we have too much participation, if participation is dominating, nobody's documenting anything, nobody's writing down anything, no contracts are written, then the problem is we don't have enough material to anchor things and uncover assumptions. Or to put it very easily, you get this feeling that we're just workshopping. Another workshop after another workshop. And nobody says, is nobody right? I have this feeling we had the same workshop 6 months ago. What happened? Didn't anybody write down these ideas? Aren't we building on top of something? So typically a workshop, if nobody documents anything, if nobody puts together things, that becomes just participation. There's no reification. And then we can go the other way around. If we have too much reification, there's no discussion, there's no participation. Then how do we know? What do we people, this is maybe the case of just written top-down orders. Somebody, here's a document telling that these are our goals. And they're kind of like, okay, I don't really understand it, but yeah, maybe I need to just obey. So there's no participation of understanding, what does this mean? How do I take these things and apply them into my job and so forth? And that's why they need to be in balance. And some people might say that this is a dialogue. This is a dialogue. But in this dialogue, you need to understand that you have objects, documents, videos, contracts, everything, all those concrete things are part of the dialogue, not just people and people. And this is what Wenger says, is that, of course, we can go to the grocery store and we can go to Wikipedia and have a look, what does it say when I put empathy? We can take a school book and look, what does it say about customer centricity? And we should probably do that. Or the tools we give in this course. Yeah, you can take those tools and go to your organization and start using them. We do take principles, tools, ideas from the world. That's what we do, of course. But what he is underlining is that they can't be our meanings as such. We need to negotiate the meanings for ourselves. And sometimes maybe I get this example when I was a young student in the software engineering program. Kind of got this feeling that a lot of us thought that there's like one single answer to these things. For example, somebody would say that, hey, this is agile programming. And then somebody else would say, no, it's not. It doesn't have this and this. And then this person, well, it has this and this. You're wrong. And kind of between the lines, there was this idea that there is only one meaning to these things. There's only one meaning to what customer centricity means. There's only one meaning to what design thinking is all about. And this is really breaking that. There isn't. Because remember the lenses, remember the complexities of an organization. We have lenses, we have perspectives, we have people with different backgrounds. So there isn't one single truth about things. And we cannot go and argue that you are wrong, this is the right answer. Because that's actually like super wrong. Nevertheless, what we need to do is try to achieve shared meanings. Which means that, okay, maybe empathy in our organization isn't the same as in your organization. But within this bubble, it means this. And we all agree more or less that this is the definition of it. So we can have shared meanings to different concepts. But let's not make the mistake and believe that those meanings are universal or that the meanings are stable. Because again, the organization is very complex. So maybe you're happy that you got the meaning right now in May 2023. Next fall, you know what? People have changed, things have changed, the meanings have changed. So that's why you need the participation, reification. And that's what the last line is all about. That's why we need people. We need curators for the reification. curator, just like, in a museum, somebody who takes care of the collections. We need somebody who takes care of all the workshop documents so that we can kind of build on top of them. But we also need the facilitation. We also need somebody to facilitate those participations, run those workshops, have those human-to-human dialogues. We need both. So maybe, it looks like this. If you're an organizational change agent, on the one hand, you are like this librarian. You're the one who knows all the different meanings and all the different workshops and all the different participations that have been done. You're the person that people go and ask. And also, you're part of the participation as well. Because you have this library knowledge, you go to the active social participations, because all that knowledge and the meanings is dynamic. You can call yourself change agent. I would call you a leader. The fact is that we need someone who actually does all this. Somebody needs to do this, because I try to convince with the Wenger model, you can't have one, because otherwise you can't take things forward. You can't facilitate the change forward. Good. Let's have an example, very simple one. I'm not sure if anybody knows this company. It's a Finnish, I think it's family-owned company, but not quite sure. Relatively big. Let's see, I have some numbers here somewhere. The picture in the middle shows you the kind of products they do. So actually, if you go to a shopping mall and they're selling you hot dogs or ball buns, it might be Halton machinery that they're using to do those for you. But yeah, it's almost 2,000 people in 30 different countries. And according to my data, 2018 had over 200 million revenue. So it's a big company, international company. Now here is their mission. Their mission is that to enable people's well-being in demanding indoor environments. Great, fantastic. Does it inspire you? I don't know. Does it inspire me? Nah, there's nothing wrong with it, but doesn't hit a nerve in a positive or negative way. That's what company missions. So this is a story that Kai Konola, I think he was the chairman of the board, told me, and was that for them, they actually made a lot of work. They made definitely the participation reification exercise. If I remember correctly, it took weeks or months, and everybody was involved, from top leadership all the way to the people on the factory floor. And they were having discussions about what do we do, why do we do things, listening to people, having people participate, and so forth and so forth. And then they came up with this slogan, or this one sentence. And according to him, magic started happening. It became suddenly a framework for decision-making for anybody in the company. The shareholders were more committed because they could understand that, okay, this is the big thing that they're aiming at. Their growth strategy started from this. It helped them to differentiate in the market, helped them to choose the strategic partners. And perhaps most importantly, the employees found their own work more meaningful, and they were more committed to the company. Now, of course, the thing is that it's not because that sentence is somehow magical. I mean, it's not like a spell from a Harry Potter book. If you say it aloud, magic happens. No, of course it doesn't work like that. For us not working at Halton, or us who are not involved in the process, kind of looks like a semi-boring mission statement, with all due respect. But the magic comes from that they did a lot of work to create the shared meaning for it. And once they had the shared meaning, that sentence was kind of the symbol of all the tens of discussions and everything they had done. And all the kind of, how should I say, the hidden meanings, the shared meanings, and all the whole process of doing it. And that's where the magic is. Great. Anything anybody wants to add? I'll have another look about the annotation thing. Any comments, any experiences you had? Oh, here, I guess. Now, I can't get it away. Okay. Because now I'm going to make you do an exercise. Yeah. Thank you, Adrita. Definitely. Reification and facilitation. That's the way to do. You can't put a number on it. You need to start having this process of generating the shared meaning. Absolutely. That's my point. Good. Let's make you think about this. So we're going to, not yet, but soon, Rosa Rannika is going to put you into the breakout room for 10 minutes. Before you do that, I'm going to soon give you the exercise. But before you do that, we're going to count 2 minutes. So Rosa, you are ready to count 2 minutes. And we're asking you to think about this in silence for 2 minutes, and then we throw you into the breakout rooms. So you're kind of prepared. Okay? And then roughly 10 minutes in the rooms and so on. Here is an example. So just I ran a workshop together with Aalto Executive Education companies, but also academics and experts on work and all of that. And we made this little booklet that is in Finnish. Sorry to those who don't understand Finnish, but that's how it is. And one big kind of theme from that book was about this meaning making, that all of those corporate leaders and experts kind of noticed that in the future, leadership and running organization is exactly what Jari said. It's continuous meaning making. That's what leadership, and the leadership role is somehow to facilitate that. To kind of, in a way, to be on top of that. It doesn't mean that you can, as a leader, you have responsibility to give direction, to facilitate, and perhaps to some degree control it. Although I think control is sometimes an allergic word.
But that comes from meaning making when we are discussing about goals and achievements and so on, so that we make it transparent that what we are doing, how we understand and how we interpret it. And that way the control function comes quite naturally as a part of it. And so that's transparency is needed, that we really talk about those things.
Yeah. Nevertheless, the point of this slide is that what did these 30 people think about? What are the meanings that more or less any organization needs to curate, to facilitate? And you can see they're probably all more or less familiar. One of the big things that, everybody's talking about change. Everybody was talking about change even before the pandemic. And you need to kind of, shared meaning. What is change? What is change in our organization? Rather than just saying change all the time. What is considered work? I think this was a good one. The perspective in that booklet and in the workshop was more like on a societal level. So when we had all these corporate leaders together with the experts and the academics, was that we have actually need to negotiate what is work and what isn't work. Because everything becomes so much, brain work. You're thinking about your work on a Sunday afternoon. Is that work or not work? I'm sure we all understand this dilemma. Then the lifelong learning has been obvious for years, but who is responsible for it? We need to negotiate. Is it the employer? Is it the employee? Is it the society? Is Aalto University providing you with free courses? Are we responsible at Aalto for your life? How does it go? Well, we talk a lot about the value. This is actually where I kind of picked it up. Meta skills was talked quite a lot. I think we're going to come back to that later in this course. That kind of, how should I say, perpendicular to your technical skills, kind of, business skills or programming or the classical skills. We need these kind of other type of skills that somehow facilitate us getting things done. And then last but least is kind of my favorite. We need some silos. We need some borders. We cannot, otherwise it will be just chaos. We cannot work as a group of people if we don't have some boundaries. Boundaries, whether it's responsibility, roles, work time, vacation time. Those are all boundaries and silos. And of course we need them. We all understand that, I guess, perhaps even better than back in 2019. So those, generally speaking, are things that you probably need to start negotiating. And now the brightest of you have probably figured out, I had this vitamin thing, and I never did answer which one to choose. Design, agile, lean startup. But now I'm going to give you an answer, which you probably guess is not going to be as clear as you hope. I don't know what you hope for. But the thing is that you this is the process. Thinking about, okay, the context is this. You're thinking about starting a change in an organization. You know that somehow we need to be more agile or more lean or more design-centric or something like that. Start with your best guess. Start with something. Look at the history where you came from. Are we an engineering company? Maybe the lean thinking is really good for us. Are we a design-oriented company? Maybe then in that reason, let's start with this thing. But anyway, you start with something, just like a seed you plant on the ground. And that's kind of your first participation. Let's take the business model canvas. We're all a bunch of designers. Maybe business models is our blind spot. Let's start with the business model canvas. And then you start working with it. You start, getting hands dirty with it. And that's the participation part. And then people say, hey, I don't understand that. Let's add this. Let's do that. And then you do a new version of it. That's the reification. Then you have your own version of the business model canvas. And then you use it again, participation. And then you make a new one with your principles in it. And that's how you kind of get it. And all the time, you're probably growing the audience if that's what you need. Start with few people, 2 or 3, and then you have 5, you have maybe 15, and so forth and so forth. So the answer is that this is one way of doing it, because like it said, I've been saying many times, you just can't take things from the outside world and use them as such. You need to adapt and adopt and evolve them, and it's the curating and the facilitating. That's the thing. And you start with your best guess. What works for us most probably? So another way of putting it into this yin and yang circle is that you have the tools. You have the actual objects, whether it's a Kanban board or specific war room. It can be like physical things like rooms and everything. Those are the reifications. The organization. We have this room where our multidisciplinary team meets every Monday for 2 hours. Well, that's a reification of a lot of abstract things, isn't it? And then, of course, what you are trying to change and achieve is people's thinking and behavior and understanding. Then you kind of start facilitating this cycle all the time. So another way of thinking, if we put it into the exercise you did this week, so which do I choose? Design, agile, lean startup. So if that in the middle is your project, your change program, it has a beginning, it has an end, probably. If it doesn't, I recommend that having a milestone at least. Then you just do this. What's the long-term desired impact? What has happened 1 year after your change project has been successful? What is it that you're looking for? And then, just like the professional golfer, you start backtracking from that. 12 months, 6 months, 1 month. And then you get, after this change project, what do we need to have to reach the impact after 1 month? And then you go back even further. So where do we come from? What kind of background our people have? What do they know? What kind of things they appreciate? Are they allergic to the word design? Some people are. So maybe not be so design-centric or something like that. Who needs to be involved? Somebody mentioned being very tactical about choosing people who to negotiate with. And then You make your best guess. So which school of thought should we start with? Ta-da! And that's another way of thinking about it. You understand the desired impact. You could probably do the context on. And then, of course, next, you would do the dumb goals, which is exercise 3, criteria for champagne. This week's exercise, 1 week to deliver. And you probably guess it, you're going to get a pair, or maybe you already did. Again, the pair chooses a project, some current project, can be exactly the same project as last week, doesn't matter. Ask for the desired impacts, 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and then facilitate them to answer the success criteria. Remember, I had this slide before the break where it had all the facilitated questions. You could just read them aloud, and that's facilitation. You know, they're going to tell you that this is my success criteria 1 month after the project has ended. And then you ask, like, well, is it doable? Explain. Is it understandable? Explain. Is it measurable? Explain. That's facilitation. And same as last week, it's you who are writing down the other person's stuff. So you're listening, you're asking, you're documenting, and then you switch. And then, just like previous weeks, reflect on what you learned about the tool, about the facilitation, and how you would apply the learnings. Remember, the focus is on the facilitation. If you learned that this is a good goal in company AYZ for doing, you know, XYZ, yeah, it's interesting, but we're really how to learn about the kind of the facilitation part and all of that. Please, please, please make an effort. Makes everything much more better when you write down your thoughts and reflections. Use the submission form by the end of next Tuesday. And that's it. Next week, Jari and facilitation in depth. Don't leave yet. A couple of slides. Further readings about today. Go and check out the Jeff Gotthelf's talk. It's a good one. A couple of articles over there. There's the Schneider book I was using or referring to. Jeff has written one as well. And everything is there in the website as well, not the references. And here's your checklist. Remember to write the attendance form. Just once is enough, once per lecture attendance form. You get the slides, the readings, recordings in the Medium page. Rosa and Annika are doing a lot of work to smooth the sailing, so always appreciate their emails. And any questions, email, Slack, or ask now. Okay, Jari, anything you want to add before we officially close shop?
Be proactive with your pair. I mean, that's one thing.
That was the key
in the beginning. So that makes it easier. And next time we will build on this what we have done discussed today. So how to make meanings and how to build facilitation relationship and also how to really prepare for good facilitation process. And we open up that quite a bit, and there is also 2 breakout rooms discussion, so you can discuss even more and share your ideas. But looking forward meeting you next week.